Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro Podcast. I am your host, Toby Passman. On the show with me today, we have a special guest, Tamy Khan. Tamy is a mindfulness and happiness coach, a yoga teacher, and the founder of Happy Meditator. She helps people create a calmer, more mindful, and happier, resilient life. She does this with one-on-one coaching, group classes, and online programs. Her coaching is based on mindfulness techniques, meditation, and scientifically proven strategies. She believes that anybody can create a life of less stress, anxiety, and better balanced emotions. Happy Meditator is her life's dream of creating a place where people can get inspired and get help with creating a happy life that they want. We all have the potential for happiness, and having some guidance in the process can help things fall into place. Tamy also has a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's degree in clinical social work with a specialty in working with adults and the elderly. She's also an experienced mental health counselor, group therapist, and healthcare manager. She's worked with families, seniors, and people suffering from depression, dementia, affective disorders, schizophrenia, and addiction problems. Tamy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Toby, for having me here. I'm very excited about our interview today.
Likewise. So I want to hear, where did you originally even sort of hear about, meditation or yoga as far as their possible beneficial impact on mental health? Because it sounds like you'd been in the mental health sphere and then discovered some of these techniques. So tell me about how did that originally come about?
Yeah. So basically, as you mentioned from the introduction, I had experience working in mental health and in counseling from a quite a traditional perspective in terms of, group therapy, working with people, in healthcare, medication, and that sort of traditional perspective, I think, of mental health. And then suddenly I came about a challenge in my life. I decided to turn into yoga and meditation as a way to deal with my personal challenge. Suddenly one day I woke up feeling extremely dizzy, like literally my world started spinning. And I developed all these physical symptoms that were associated with auditory problems that were affecting my brain deeply. And as a result of coping with all these symptoms, I started suffering from a lot of stress and anxiety. I knew from my clinical background that I was not mentally depressed, but the doctors were only giving me options in terms of medication, and I didn't want to go through that route. So I decided to turn into meditation initially, and then yoga. And initially, obviously, my interest in yoga was to help me cope with the balance. But then I realized that it was such a powerful tool with the combination of meditation that completely changed my life, my stress and anxiety very quickly. And I decided to steer my career into teaching more people the self-help tools that I developed to work with my own problems.
Got it. So tell me about what did you notice when you started, both the meditation and the yoga practice, as far as just what started changing?
Yeah. One of the most severe symptoms that I was having was this constant movement inside my brain. It had to do with the symptoms that were triggering problems with my auditory system. You're a brain guy, so you know possibly what I'm talking about. And this constant perception of everything spinning and moving around you. As a result, this was triggering a lot the stress response in my body and raising my anxiety and sensations of panic. So the first thing that I noticed as soon as I learned postures that I could focus my spine, keep that sense of balance and stillness in my body, I was able to reduce that stress response in my brain. So it all started with literally training my body to kind of tell my mind, it's okay. We're sensing stillness through this pose. Let's disengage that panic, anxious response in the brain. And another important aspect that I noticed straight away with meditation is that a lot of the practices that we learn in meditation, they're about perception and creating a sense of awareness of the changes that are happening physically and mentally in the body. And that was something that I have never, ever done in my life. Really deeply increase that self-awareness. And that was literally life-changing for me.
Okay. And so when you started noticing that, as far as the benefits within yourself, how did you start integrating it into your, I guess at the time, what were you doing career-wise in the mental health field?
Yeah, well, at the time I was actually taking a break. I had my daughter, and my daughter was not the sort of child that I wanted to put in childcare. She was very, very attached, so I kind of took a break when I had her, and I decided with all these things that started happening that was a perfect shift for me to change, and not wanting to go back again to mental health care and traditional systems. So I decided to start to teach meditation. I train in meditation practices. So that was the first thing I did. And straight away, I started spreading the word and doing training and classes. And that was kind of the first step. Then I decided to train as a yoga teacher, and I added then the sort of integration of both fields.
So when it comes to teaching meditation, I think that's something that, probably a lot of my listeners, they probably tried to meditate. Maybe a lot of them do meditate on a regular basis. But tell me about just what are some of the misconceptions as far as people have in terms of learning to meditate, and what are, maybe some of the simple tips that you advise for kind of beginner meditators?
Yeah, I think the first thing I tend to quickly catch up when I hear people that struggle to meditate is that they have set an expectation that meditation is a blissful practice. And the reality is that in meditation, you sit with your mind and the craziness that is going on inside your head. And that is not a blissful, peaceful experience at all for most people. Basically, when we sit in meditation, we realize the sort of thoughts, beliefs, and all sorts of things that are constantly going on in our heads that we are not aware of. One of the concepts that I like to introduce to people when they're starting a meditation practice is the idea of rumination. Rumination basically is when our mind gets pulled in different directions. We don't have a sense of control of our thoughts. Most of the time, our rumination tends to be about negative things due to the way our brain works, how our central nervous system works. So it is very common for people when they sit in meditation as beginners that they feel this is not working, this is worse. I'm feeling more obsessed and more upset, more frustrated. And that is just part of the process to retrain your mind, to understand the craziness that is going through our heads all the time. A second aspect that I think people find when they're starting meditation is that they decide that they suddenly want to meditate for 20 minutes, and they start with that straight away. And that could seem kind of very difficult because they're not used to sitting in a posture of stillness, looking at their minds and what's going on in their mental activity. So usually I advise people to start small. Start with mini steps of simply connecting with a practice for 3 to 5 minutes or even less. The important thing at the beginning is consistency. And thirdly, and I find this for people that struggle the most with staying consistent in the meditation. If you're a person that struggles or not struggles, tends to be a perfectionist or want things to always be correct, right, and perfect, I find that seems to be kind of a personality trait that affects a lot of people when they start a meditation practice. Because part of what we learn in meditation is the art of letting go. Our mind pulls us in one direction, we let go of that direction, and we wing back to whatever was the focus of our training. So I find those three aspects are very critical for a lot of beginning meditators.
Okay. And is that something that the art of letting go? I want to focus on that. As far as,
Mm.
is that something that you find is a conscious process that people need to take, or is that something that, like, the more they meditate, kind of the better they become at just kind of like letting those thoughts kind of arise and then pass?
I think it's a combination of both. One aspect that we need to understand is that our nervous system has been conditioned to act at a certain way. And what we're doing in meditation is try to change how our survival mode gets triggered in the brain. So we are looking to retrain our mind to do something that is not used to doing unless you do some other type of focus practice. One important aspect that I see when you were mentioning about the art of letting go is that a lot of the times we are not consciously doing this unless we sit in a practice of meditation. So in meditation, you're going to be conscious of that aspect of letting go. But at the same time we're doing this, we're going to be looking to create new neuropaths, new ways of your brain to connect in a different way, who start to teach the brain how to relate to the world and to the thoughts in a different way. And that's also something that happens with long-term meditators. That is something we're not consciously doing. It's just the brain is learning a new type of mind training.
I see. So tell me about, as far as with the different mental health conditions out there,
Mhm.
what do we know as far as what does the research say? What have you found in your experience as far as how meditation or yoga can impact and potentially provide benefits to these to the symptoms of these different conditions?
There's some wonderful, fantastic pieces of research that have come out in the last 10 years, and they still are coming a lot. I'm learning on a weekly basis. I'm kind of a research nerd in that sense. I'm always looking for new things that I could spread the word more of people to persuade them more to engage in this type of practices. And now we know I can't think of not a mental health condition that has been proven somehow to be benefited by yoga and meditation. An important component that I think all these interest in these practices came from when science and psychology and neurology started to look at well-being from a different perspective. And they decided, instead of studying illness, let's just study the brains of people that seem to be happy, that seem to have better mental balance, that have more resilience, that don't suffer from all these mental health problems that we seem to be growing and having more in our society these days. So let's look at the people that their brains look optimal. And obviously, when they started to look into these brains, they decided to look into the brains of long-term meditators, into yogis, into contemplative practices, people that used to do contemplative practices like nuns, and people who experience a lot of focused type of mind training. And they realized that we could do a lot of things to help people train their minds and their bodies into these practices. And there's plenty of research that supports the changes in depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety disorders, stress reduction. And going even further, there's also a lot of benefits that have been proven now with physical health conditions. People that suffer from immune diseases, arthritis, diabetes, chronic pain conditions, you name it. A lot of the high top health conditions for mental problems and physical problems have been getting a lot of benefits from putting all this research into practice behind yoga and meditation.
Awesome. When it comes to the specific types of meditation that have like the most research, is it more sort of like, I know like there's the mindfulness, like the mindfulness based stress reduction program
Mm-hmm.
that has been very well studied. Is it mostly that, or is there other forms of meditation? And I guess the second kind of question
Mm-hmm.
on that is, are there certain types of meditation that work better for different conditions?
Yes. Well, the answer is yes. There's this kind of a diverse field when it comes to meditation. The most well-known practices are, I think, right now, in mindfulness-based training, and there's substantial amount of research in mindfulness-based training. Basically, these are exercises that you focus your mind in one single point. But there's now an evolving field that has looked into different types of meditation. There's Yoga Nidra, which is one of the ones I'm trained also in, which is more of this sort of layered practice that you build based on the philosophy of yoga. And that one also has pretty good substantial research to back it up. There's also done research in Vipassana, which is another variation of body sensing practice. And the other new field that has been getting a lot of attention lately is our compassion-based training. So practices like loving kindness, meditation, and compassion type of practices have been getting a lot of attention. And the second aspect of your question, yes, depending on the field that you're looking at with the benefits, there's more, I'll say, from the research that I've been looking at in the last 10 years, more influence when it comes to mental health from the perspective of Yoga Nidra, mindfulness-based practices, and compassion training. So in that aspect, all those work well, but there's certain fields that work in meditation with breath work. And those have been very highlighted to help people that experience post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorders, to gain a lot of benefit. And finally, another piece that I wanted to share with you when it comes to compassion-based training. Now there's a growing interest in this practice because a lot of it is being applied to the workplace or to community settings or for changing, developing strategies to work with social problems like racism or crime. So there's also another aspect with compassion-based practices that now is becoming very, very well known by different sectors of society.
Awesome. So tell me about the your business now. I'm Happy Meditator. Tell me about the origins of that, and what exactly that you are that you hope to do with the business.
Yeah. So right now I'm providing services individually to groups and to remote teams. So I'm trying to spread the word as much as I can to not only help the individuals and help groups and society as well. One of the things I do with the programs I create and when I work one-to-one is that I'm integrating the best of the research that is out there. So my meditation programs, mindfulness at work programs are designed to not only look at one perspective in meditation. I'm looking to help people make meditation a practice that they can bring to work, that they can bring to their relationships, that they can bring to better their lives, to build more resilience and more happiness. So I'm trying to integrate a lot of the aspect that we have talked about that comes with the research that go beyond just practice and meditation. It's about integrating and making all these things work for your life and building the life that you want to have.
Okay. So you spend a lot of time kind of pouring through the research?
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a research nerd, and I've been taking courses with University of Berkeley, Harvard, Stanford, that are all bringing great integrative programs that are looking at the best research out there. So it's not only about practicing meditation and practicing yoga, it's also about applying principles from positive psychology to really work on retraining your mind and your body.
Okay. Tell me about some of those principles.
Yeah, well, basically, when we're looking now at uh, establishing mental resilience for individuals, which is usually the main problem why people come to these practices, now we know that all these philosophies from the East around compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, building concentration, mind training, and integrating mind body are essential for building mental resilience. So when we look at, or when someone, let's say, comes to me and explains to me the difficulties that they're having, the first thing we need to look at, what are your strengths? We focus on building more those strengths and integrating all these principles around mindfulness, compassion, gratitude, positive psychology, to really put them into practice in your life, to retrain not only your mind, but the way you think. It is important for anybody that is looking to improve their lives to focus on a growth mindset. And there's so much research now that is coming around this perspective of retraining how we feel of ourselves, how we grow more positive beliefs, and integrating as well here, because I know you're into neurochemistry, integrating practice on a daily basis that help our bodies chemically. So it's about doing more things that we know that push hormones in our body that help us build more mental resilience and be more happy.
I'd love to talk about that. Tell me about like the kind of the neurochemistry of
Yes,
meditation or yoga. Like, what do we
yes.
know as far as what does the research say as far as
Mhm.
what's going on? You know, maybe we could talk about both like kind of the brain waves, the electrical side of things, along with what's going on chemically with the
Yeah.
neurotransmitters.
Well, I know this is your field, so I'm going to talk to you from the perspective of how I understand these things from a nerdy sort of person who's into these things. So that one of the first things that I have loved so much research that has come up right now um, about what we're calling the happiness chemicals. So we all know for happiness, the people that are more mentally balanced, there's this sort of cocktail of hormones that we need to have in our body. We're looking at, oxytocin, endorphins, and promoting not only the good chemicals, we also want to reduce hormones in our body like cortisol, which promote inflammation and promote, now we know, illness in the body and all sorts of other problems. So the happiness chemicals are important for us to take those into account, how we balance our lives. So we need to have situations in our lives that involve overcoming fears, working with strengths. We need to be connected and engage more socially to push oxytocin in our bodies. And we also need to look at other aspects when it comes to what we physically do that also push all these good hormones in our body. A second important aspect when it comes to when we do yoga, just to see the practical side of changing our chemistry. We all know when you practice yoga that you're put into very uncomfortable positions, right? They're positions that are could trigger fear, could trigger balance problems, could trigger physical discomfort. And in yoga, part of the experience is that you stay there with the discomfort. And now we know that this is a great way that we could add more endorphins to the body to push through a situation of difficulty. So we're doing this in an environment that is safe in a yoga practice, which is ideal as well to help our bodies reduce that stress response and go more into that sort of calming response, which is how we can retrain our minds to reduce stress and anxiety.
So the increased endorphins, that definitely makes sense as far as why people would notice like a reduction in like what we were talking about earlier with like pain, and I think you're saying like arthritis and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the mechanisms as far as, because that's kind of our body's, from my understanding, I mean, endorphins are kind of our body's natural pain relievers, right?
Yes. So that is something that is key to endorphins and yoga. Also, when it comes to the perspective of meditation, there are specific programs. And a few years ago, I worked with a group of elderly women who had chronic pain. And we use meditation as that strategy to build those endorphins and stay with the discomfort of the pain. So that's also another very practical tool that meditation can help us. The second aspect of it, when we are staying in the meditation practice, when we're in discomfort, we can use specific techniques with the breath that induce in the brain changing gears from the fear response from the amygdala and moving it to a calming response, which is key, especially for people that suffer from chronic pain, because their bodies tend to stay more in that stress response, body tension, and promote inflammation. So this is also another very positive practical side if you want to see the science behind helping people reduce chronic pain by using meditation.
Okay. What else do we know about what's going on in the body and brain during meditation?
Yes. Another important aspect that I love to share, and actually I created a PDF on my website, is sleep. And we all know what happens. Well, you're very familiar with what happens in terms of how the brain needs to start to change gears in terms of waves and mental activity to promote sleep. We know now that people that suffer from chronic health problems, stress, anxiety, and mental problems tend to be more easily aroused mentally, and this as a result has an impact on the brain. So these people have a harder time a lot of the times going to sleep or staying asleep because their brain is more trained to stay aroused. So we can use meditation as a way to train the brain and train the body to reduce that arousal state and promote more the calming response in the body. That is what you want before going to sleep. So practices of breath work and meditation before going to sleep could have a very productive impact on increasing the quality of your sleep. But also we know from the research that consistent meditators will improve their sleep. And it is all connected to, again, training the brain with all these tools.
Awesome. Okay. So tell me about kind of what in terms of the say the future of meditation or yoga in terms of integrating it, you know, into more kind of our like I guess society, Western society, I guess for lack of a better word or lack of a better term. I mean, it seems like something that's definitely has risen to prominence. You know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't know within that past it seems like 5 years. There's just been kind of this surge of uh, uh, I guess yoga studios, meditation places popping up, along with just public interest in it. Where do you kind of see it going in the future? Like, and then I guess the other question I have on that is, do you pay any attention to like maybe more of the sort of like high tech neuromodulation techniques such as like neurofeedback or transcranial stimulation? Does any of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff interest you?
Yeah. Actually, I know a little bit about those fields because some years ago, I used to work in a mental health hospital that they used to actually use delivering electric charges to the brain to promote better mental health and shake out people out of depression. So one of the interesting things that we are seeing now is all this explosion of research that is not only about the individual benefits of yoga and meditation, but how can we spread this to help with social problems, bigger problems in the society, and also to the workplace and in leadership. So we're seeing now companies that are investing a lot of money and efforts to bring all these practices to their workforce, to their leaders, because we know that mindful leaders, more compassionate leaders, and productivity at the workplace are deeply related to all these things. So we're looking now as well a lot of studies when it comes to emotional regulation and emotional intelligence that are getting a lot of people really interested more in this practice. So I think all this is going to keep growing and growing and growing. This other important, I think, thing to acknowledge with all these research that are coming out is that all these practices are secular practices that we're spreading. So I think initially years ago, people were afraid of all these practices because they would see them as woo-woo stuff or things that felt like interfere with their beliefs, or they were not really actual things that will change their lives. So the growing piece of research is helping change perspective about adding these things. Right now, with our global pandemic, all the social difficulties people are dealing with right now, people are turning into new things to help them de-stress, calm down, and improve their sleep, deal better with their social situations. So I think the pandemic actually has helped get more people interested in a lot of these practices. And remind me of the second part of your question. I kind of got too
Oh,
excited there.
as far as like with like neurotechnologies such as
Yes,
neurofeedback
yes,
or transcranial stimulation, like
yes,
those are kind of the way I see them are kind of like offshoots of meditation. So
yeah.
do you pay any attention to those technologies, the research?
Um, I do pay attention to the research that is coming out. There is some new tools that have been looking into making these perspectives more accessible to individuals. So there's different gadgets that you can use now to kind of monitor the physical response that you're having in your body. Specifically, they're looking, mostly the ones that I have seen, around heartbeat, breathing rate, and try to get you to get into specific zones. So we know in those zones, you're going to change your brain waves, you're going to have all these sort of hormones and physical changes to promote the calming response in the body. So I think there's a lot of people that that maybe are more prone to evidence-based practices. So I think there's a growing field that some companies are investing money in developing these tools to do this. Personally, I think part of what I have learned through these years, as we mentioned earlier, is the art of letting go. And I don't see myself getting into these type of practices that go so deeply into measuring the body response, because I think that's an element of us trying to still control everything and staying into that sort of control mentality. But I see that they could serve a big part of the population that might find them very useful in that sense.
Great, great. Well, how about, do you have any like kind of anecdotal stories as far as I was going to ask in terms of different, patients or I guess clients that
Mm-hmm.
you've worked with, say that have been dealing with some kind of, mental disorder, and how, if you could kind of walk me through exactly like how the implementation of a meditation or yoga practice has actually, changed their symptomatology and kind of altered, I guess, the course of their disorder.
Mm-hmm. It is very common for individuals that come to me for coaching, that they're coming to meditation and to yoga because they are frustrated with traditional services in mental health. There's a lot of people who have been years in counseling and therapy, in medication. Some of them have even developed addiction problems as a result of not being able to deal with their mental problems. And alcoholism is one I see frequently. And once I explain to people, the reasons why we want to do this practice behind the research and the mind training, and people are able to adapt them and consistently do them, I see how their minds and how their stress and how things start to shift very quickly. So once we get into that point that people establish a consistent meditation practice, I'll say usually these might take for them to really start to experience the benefits 2 to 3 months. Then we can move into what are the strategies we want to apply to creating that sort of mental balance. What we talked earlier about those happiness chemicals, emotional intelligence, and looking at the workplace and other things. But what I see it's critical as the first step is for people to really get into meditation and a practice that is daily and consistent. So it's almost like we need to reduce that mental activity for people to have some clarity. And then that sense of clarity helps them move forward with other things that they want to change in their lives.
So it sounds like kind of the first step being sort of getting them out of that just fight or flight and into these deeper states where they can find more clarity.
Yeah. Meditation is the pillar for me for everything. And yoga, it's a way to extend meditation. A lot of people see yoga as only a physical practice, and the reality is that yoga was created as a first step to meditation. So what we're doing in yoga, it's preparing the body, starting to center the mind with the movements and the breath. So then we can have a meditation practice. So it's all geared towards ending with meditation. And then from meditation, then you begin to work with other principles in yoga that involve self-discovery, self-help, spirituality, as well as one another important aspect. So it is important that if we can do meditation, but also we can add other practices in our day to keep reminding our brain to go to that calming response, are also extremely beneficial for people that are suffering from mental health problems and addiction problems.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Tammy, I really enjoyed our conversation today. If people want to find out more about what you're doing with Happy Meditator, where would you direct them to?
Yes. Well, you can find me under Happy Meditator on everything, on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and also my website is happymeditator.com. So if anyone wants to get in contact with me, just find me as Happy Meditator everywhere.
Great. And for those listeners who enjoyed the show today, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro. You can also find audio versions of the podcast available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and just about anywhere else that audio podcasts are available. Tammy, again, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a real pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.